Do you ever feel like connection shouldn't be this hard? We're wired for it, right? We're built to bond. Yet somehow we live in a world where loneliness feels like a personal failure. Like if you're not constantly fulfilled by your partner or your kids, your group chat, your job, something must be wrong with you. This week, I found myself sitting next to my kids, half watching Paw Patrol while scrolling Instagram because, for the record, I would rather be waterboarded than sit through another episode of Puppies Solving Crimes. Well, I told myself I was being present. I was in the room, right? And I've actually tried a lot of techniques to make that time feel more intentional, even meditating through it, which sounds noble until you realize I was mostly just imagining myself at a silent retreat with no theme songs and zero responsibilities. Perfect little loop of modern parenthood, and a perfect example of how we keep trying to fake connection without ever really dropping into it. And the wild part is, I know better. I study mindfulness. I've set the screen limits. I've done the breath work and the boundary setting, and yet there I was, disconnected, guilty, tired, still reaching for something that I couldn't name. And lately I've been wondering, was it always this way? We love to look back and pretend we had it better before. When moms baked sourdough and kids played outside and families sat down for dinner without a single screen in sight. But ask your parents if they ever truly felt seen. Ask your grandparents if they ever really knew their own parents. The truth is, disconnection isn't new. We've just got better at distracting ourselves from it. So now we're not only lonely, we feel broken for being lonely, like we're doing life wrong, like we just need to try harder, be more intentional, fix ourselves. But what if the answer isn't in trying harder? What if the truth is, you're just not that good? And not in a shameful way, in a liberating way. You're not supposed to be perfect. You're not supposed to hold it all together, all the time, with no village and no margin for error. And the sooner you admit that, the sooner you get to breathe again. Also, I turned 40 this week. Big number, right? Well, I think that's why turning 40 this year hit me differently. Not because I'm freaking out about aging. I'm actually really excited for this decade. But because I'm noticing what matters and what really, really doesn't. And what matters more than ever is being known. Not followed, not admired, known. And maybe real connection starts there. Not with more effort, but with more truth. And by the way, that line, "You're not that good," that's from today's guest, Dr. Jody Carrington. And when she said it, it just hit like one of those truths that I didn't know I was looking for. Dr. Jody is a psychologist, a speaker, and best-selling author who has spent decades helping people reconnect with each other and with themselves. From psychiatric units to packed stages, her work is refreshingly raw, deeply human, and just the right amount of hilarious. So in this episode, you will learn why "you're not that good" might be the most freeing thing you'll hear all year, how to stop performing connection and actually feel it, and what your nervous system, your kids, and your future self really need from you. I was also a guest on Dr. Jody's podcast, Unlonely, and the episode was just one of my favorites that I've ever been on, so definitely go check that out also. I'll link it in the show notes. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything. Work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out. But that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. and you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high-quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE.
People on social media are like, you're so real. Like, yes, because the vast majority of social media aren't. They're like, we're so good. Look at, we pulled together this sourdough fucking starter kit while we took our kids to school in matching outfits, and then we're gonna have pictures after, family pictures in a bush. This is no judgment. Like, if you can pull that shit together, God bless your soul. I'm very excited for you. Like, it does not matter to me what your jam is. The part is that I think so much of it is fake, that we're setting a high bar for so many people that just really need to know they're doing beautifully, that you're more than enough to your babies. You're not that good, baby girl. Nope. All you need to do is next best right kind thing, and it is more than enough, I promise you.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So I'm really excited because we've already become friends on your podcast. So we're just bringing the vibe over here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I just said to you before we went live that was the best conversation I've had in a long time. So I'm ready to do it again for your people.
I can't wait to link to both and see how people take it. And when you come into my vibe, I go into your vibe. It's just beautiful.
Right? Yes.
So what inspired you to make this idea of loneliness and finding connection again part of your life story?
I think that it was always a part of our life, my life story. Most everybody's life story, I think, is this understanding that there's two rules to the human race, right? We're neurobiologically wired for connection. You disconnect from an infant, they die. That we will never automate relationship, no matter how much AI we get. The second rule is the hardest thing we will ever do is look at each other. And so despite the fact that we're neurobiologically wired for connection, the hardest thing as humans we will ever do is look at each other. And we've never had this many opportunities to look away. And when I unpack my story, I grew up in a very, small town in northern Canada, white, straight, able-bodied, privileged, connected very much to my parents. And I had a little brother until I found out my dad and my mom divorced. And there was always something. And I think that, sometimes as kids we know this. But anyway, I found out when I was 35 that I had a sister, a full biological sister. And my parents got pregnant right after high school and bound my mom's belly and didn't tell anybody about it. They were high school sweethearts and very, come from religious families. And so they hid mom My dad and my mom hid her in a home for unwed mothers and made up a big story. And she had my sister, and my sister, the nuns at the time said to my mom, like, don't you ever tell anybody. Like, if this is your choice to give her up for adoption, then you're not telling anybody. And so she's like, okay, yep, this is what we have to do. My dad came and picked her up, and they never spoke about her again. And no doubt in their body kept the score, as we all do. And so my dad, ended up, they disconnected in many ways. And they still have this most incredible bond, but they haven't been, together for years. And when I was 35, pregnant with our first baby, my dad and my mom called us home to the farm that we grew up in. And so, dad walked into this house, which he hadn't lived in 15 years or something. And we all sat at the kitchen table as we did when we were young. And everybody starts to cry. And my dad said, we have to tell you something we haven't told anybody in 40 years. And I'm like, holy shit, like, what could that possibly be? Because I know everything about these people. And so I was thinking, like, maybe dad's gay. Like, what could you possibly hold for 40 years that and he said, you have a sister. And I was like, we have a what? Like, so I was the oldest and the only girl, and now I'm the middle kid. And I got to say, like, no, thank you. And so the mom's crying, dad's crying, and they're trying to explain, all the things about, what happened and when it happened. And that, she looks like your mother and she sounds just like you, Jody. And I was like, whoa, time out. You met her? And they're like, yes, we've got to know her over the, I'm like, holy shit. And they're like, we're just wondering, like, would you like to meet her? And so I'm thinking, like, maybe like next Christmas and shit, So I'm looking at my brother like, like, do you know what's happening? And he's like, of course, Dad, we'd love to meet her. And he's like, good, she's in the garage. Like a fucking puppy. And I'm just kidding. That is actually not true. I tell the story like this every time. She was in her car on the way to our house. She's like, stop telling people I was waiting in the garage. And I was like, but I felt like you were. So, she walks in and she does. She looks just like my mom. She said, you can't tell us apart if your back is turned to us in the same room. She grew up, 2 hours from our front door. We were at the same university at the same time. We lived 6 blocks apart from each other. She has a son that's in between, my baby's ages. She's married to a firefighter. She did an undergrad in psychology. Like, it's ridiculous. And so reflecting on that massive piece of disconnection that, even in utero, no doubt I would have been aware of, depending on sort of what you believe in the universe level. I think there's been a constant trying understanding for me about, what connection and disconnection looks like. And I often attribute, becoming a psychologist to a teacher who was really regulated during, the first time she had to tell us the then captain of our hockey team had been killed in, this little town. And I remember thinking as a 16-year-old, if there's somebody at the helm of big emotions, the rest of us will be okay. And that's what I wanted to do. It all sort of made sense to me then. And so that's, 25 years ago now. And I've written some books and I talk all over the world about connection.
How is your relationship with your sister now?
It's so interesting. So I would say, we talk, we're at family functions all the time. She balances, of course, her adoptive family to, with us. And I'm very grateful that, for so many reasons, she found us. So the adoption records got unsealed in 2009, I think, or 2006. Which allowed her to search for us. And so my mom still to this day would say that she would have never looked for her. And I said, so like, would you have told me, Mom, like even on your deathbed? And she's like, nope. Like that was my promise to your father and to, the social workers and nuns at the time that we would not. And so like that, she stayed that 18-year-old girl, right? Like that, nope, that was the plan. And I was like, wow. And so credit to my sister who then, of course, made that leap and reached out to my mom first. And my dad then, my mom connected them. And so they each met her separately. And she was just very, very amazing about it all. Like, I don't need anything, want anything. I just wanted you to know, thank you for giving me an opportunity to be this great human who I am. And if you want to know more about me, here's where I am. And so it's, we've now known each other. I was pregnant with our oldest, who's now 14. So we've been in each other's lives for 15 years. And we talk once a week. Our father, her biological father, my dad, is in the later stages of dementia. So I'm very grateful that, he got to know her, she got to know him. We got to ask questions about, what those days were like, was he worried about mom? Like all the things. So I just feel very grateful that she found us when she did. And yeah, I mean, we're all going to her house for Easter.
That is so beautiful. This is strange, but I've had like this secret desire. I wish so much that I'd find a long lost sibling. I feel like that would be the coolest thing in the world. I had stepbrothers that I wasn't close to growing up, and we just feel too different. And I suppose some people feel that with their siblings, but in my head, I've always sort of idealized siblings. And so sometimes I talk to people and they're like, no, I always wished I was an only child. Or, it was always greener. And I know what that felt like. I know what life feels like to me. And to me, I've always felt kind of alone in this meat suit in this video game. Like even from when I was really young, I would have thoughts. I remember sitting in my elementary school classroom and actually thinking, what if none of this is real and I'm the only one having this experience? I can't prove anyone else's inner world is like mine. And I said it in different language, but
Yeah,
I've had this thought my whole life. And when I think about it too hard, it's actually terrifying for a moment. Like I'll get this moment of like my heart's almost stopping. Like, oh my God, I don't want to go deeper into that thought. But I've wondered if it's because I didn't grow up with someone that was connected in my reality, where it was like I was always hearing my parents. And one thing my husband and I have compared is a great thing about siblings is you can turn to each other and be like, mom and dad are being crazy, right? Whereas I had to just be the one that was wrong. Like I'm 8. I can't fight against this human over here.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do I feel that way because I never had a closer reflection to my inner world to like bounce things off of as I was growing up?
I mean, you, I think, are what I love the most about you in our just, our two interactions that I hope turn into a million more is like there's such a deep self-reflection, which I think is a function of a couple of things. Your intelligence, which I would argue is off the chart, and your self-knowledge, which I think provides us insight into a wondering, a curiosity about those relationships, right? So there's a very clear, secure sense of self that I think opens us up to those deep questions. When we're in a place of survival, just wondering about whether, we're safe or we have food or whatever, those things, despite the fact that there was lots going on in your family system, there was, even in your early years, a lot of safety and opportunity for curiosity. And I would say that I had those same thoughts. I would say I remember listening to my brother at various points, him wondering, like, is this real? And, is there life after? And can you see ghosts? And like, can you feel a sense of the universe? And really, I mean, you and I talked about this. I think one of the first conversations I had about wondering about different realms or like, just struggling with curiosity, I think is such struggling with curiosity around spirituality, is really a function of your capacity to self-reflect. Because I think when you can go deeper with yourself, those are the questions you come to, not like, do people like me? Or am I good enough even? Or like, am I going to survive? Do I have like, am I safe in my body? Am I going to get the shit beat out of me? Like, do I have enough money for food? Like, you don't get to go deeper on that, like sort of Maslow's hierarchy if you're functioning in those ways, right? And so we have you as a little girl who like the imagination had to happen a lot in your head because you're right. You couldn't bounce that off a lot of other people. You're wildly wicked smart. You had a safeness and a place where you could have massive curiosity. And you've always been like that. Like a kid who is like distracted by many things, busy, maybe not neurotypical, maybe, worried about other things, wouldn't sit in the classroom and daydream. But you afforded that. And that's a thing that I wish for my children so much these days is boredom. Is the quiet, the stillness, right? Like that's where creativity, that's where productivity, that's where innovation comes from. And we have think about how much time we are not still. Like if I'm going to produce the next book, I think we talked about this, but I speak 100 times a year. So I'm on 200 planes a year and I have 3 kids They're under 14. I have a marriage that I'm doing my very best to keep together. I really like my husband still after 18 years. And I'm also trying to be a good daughter and break glass ceilings and rewrite the script for what it looks like to be CEOs of our own companies and, make hundreds of thousands of dollars and not feel guilty about it. Like all of these things are happening while we get the constant inundation of social media. We're not designed for this. And so the space for curiosity has been significantly limited. So to answer your question, in my very small opinion, I don't think it has anything to do with your lack there of relationships. I think it has so much to do with how brilliant your mind is and how much space it had to wander. And I think that's the greatest gift.
Well, I'm not going to argue with any of that.
Well, this has been the greatest of all time.
And mic drop, we'll close there.
Yeah, that's it for today. Humans of the world.
So I'm curious then, compared to when you first sparked this thought and wanted to go deeper into human connection and all that you've learned through your clinical work and personal experience now, how has your understanding of loneliness evolved?
Okay, so I'm going to take you back just a little bit because I think this will help. So I knew I wanted to be a psychologist mostly because I felt what it meant to have somebody in my world be empathic and to see me. So you can't tell anybody about that. You have to experience that to know it. Okay, it's a deep knowing. Empathy is a deep knowing. You can read about it, write about it, but it's something that you feel, just like love, just like feeling seen, right? And I think that I was privileged enough to have many of those experiences. And then when I went into my undergrad, I ended up with a job with our National Police Force. And so it was just like opportunity to do an internship early in my psychology degree. And so for 18 months, almost 2 years, I worked as a civilian member for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And I started to really watch what it looked like when people were asked to come into other people's hardest moments. Okay, so that's really the definition of policing for me, right? Is that, Ram Dass's quote that I live by that resonates in my heart all the time is we are all just here walking each other home, right? I think we talked about this online. And what I love the most about that is that, like, wow, who are the most phenomenal walkers in this world? And I think it's people like parents and teachers, and police officers always make my top 3 because nobody calls a first responder, namely a police officer, when shit's going well. And so what you need is a regulated other to walk you home through a domestic situation, an MBA, a death notification, a burglary, like all of these things that we don't necessarily want to be present for or be a part of. And you're asking another human being who, generally speaking, doesn't know you to be there in those hardest moments. Now, in most policing organizations today, let alone 20 years ago, we don't look after them. There is no infrastructure to support the people doing the walking, zero. And so I was so captivated by this process because these humans that I were meeting were lovely and kind and strong and made me feel safe in our conversations. And, they would take me to the training academy. Let me take you on a ride along, Joe. And like, okay, you're inside. Okay, look, can you guess how fast this car is going? And okay, we're going to step into this house, honey, but I want you to be over here. Okay. And I just was so mesmerized by this group of humans who've decided to step into other people's worst moment. And as I stayed with that organization long enough, I watched how it destroyed them without exception. And I was like, what the fuck is happening here? Why are we doing this? So then I decided I was going to change the RCMP and I was going to get into organizational stress and understand trauma and how it blasts apart the body and the system. And so I did my master's and my PhD in police psychology, trauma. And then I did my residency and they said, you have to do a rotation with kids. And I was like, listen, not a fan. I'm not a huge fan of children. I have 3 of my own, so I'm kind of coming around. But I much prefer the big people. And so when I started, I had this beautiful opportunity to work with kids and families for a year. And I was blown away about all we don't know about the neurodevelopmental process of kids in trauma, right? So deep dive into that. My first job was like on a locked psychiatric inpatient unit for kids. For a decade, I worked with the hitters and the kickers and the biters, the ones that tell you to fuck off. I love those babies. I love them because we ask this question all the time. What is wrong with this one? what is wrong? And we will have a litany of answers. He got the ADHD, he got the ODD, he got the LD, he got an LMNOP and a QRS, and he's a hitter and a kicker and a biter. Okay. And you know what we never ask? What happened?
Mm.
And we ask this question all the time, right? What is wrong? We don't ask what happened. And when we start to ask that question, what happened here? It switches on this thing in this human condition called empathy that allows us to do the walk-in one more time. And so when I put those pieces together, I was like, we need to do a better job looking after the caregivers. We need to do a better job looking after the people doing the walking. And historically, we pour resources into housing insecure, financially insecure. Those are struggling with mental health. Those are the kids, the people we're serving, the customer's always right. Shifting that focus into the people doing the serving, I think is going to be the greatest switch in this generation. Because if the big people aren't okay, the little people don't stand a chance, or the people we're serving don't stand a chance. And this is the first time in history that people in human services professions have been this burnt out. 50% would identify, 1 in 2, that they're barely hanging on. And so if mental health continues, the crisis continues to explode, if racial disparity continues to be under this new administration, is something we really need to talk about, right? Regardless, right? The divisiveness that is perpetuated by our new access to social media means looking after people who can be regulating others will be the greatest investment in the next generation.
Oh, that makes so much sense too. And we like to kind of outsource the blame in a way. Like, it's easy to look at others, people who have different lives than we do, different economic statuses. But this idea of loneliness or a disconnection between a mother and a child, especially because we know from 0 to 7, so much of your subconscious beliefs are developed based on what you experience, even with a seemingly micro moment, it can create a lifelong subconscious belief. And we're living in this time of disconnection where I think a lot of people don't even know how to connect to themselves. And so how are they going to understand how to connect to another person? And we think just being in the same room is connection. But as you started this interview saying, we're more distracted than ever. It's hard to even find moments of boredom for ourselves. And how many of those moments of boredom, stillness, silence is when we turned to each other for that connection. And now because it's not a need and we have these false senses of connection because somebody commented on your Instagram post and we're just immersed. I had this moment with my kid a while back, and I am not going to pretend that I have my technology addiction completely under control. I'm still trying to find that balance of running a business and having kids. And also, we never have a show on TV.
I'm awful.
Yeah.
I'm awful.
I've never watched a show in front of my kids. They don't even know that we watch TV. I barely do. And so
you're amazing.
If the TV's on, it's a kid's show. I'm not saying I'm screen free over here, but then I'm sitting with them because I want to have a connection with them. So I'm scrolling my phone just so I don't have to watch freaking Paw Patrol. You know what I mean? And so I see it happening even with intentional people, even with this understanding, but we're normalizing something that's never been normal. And I don't think we quite see our way out of it.
No, we don't. And here's the issue that I want to run this by you, okay? Because it's the first time I've talked about this publicly. This is my pitch for the next book. I think it should be called We're Not That Good. Because we are now going to have such a desire to fix this, to overcome the smartphone addiction, to get our tablets out of the hands of our babies, and then we shame each other if we're not. Oh, you are watching your scroll. Oh my, you didn't have a dolphin assisted pool birth. Obviously your kid's got ADHD. Like we're so quick to do those things, right? And then we get overwhelmed by the numbers of burnout, the numbers of anxiety, the numbers of, marginalization and racism that just exists in this world that we can't even, how are we still here? And so then we get overwhelmed by this capacity to try to fix it, and it debilitates us. Okay. I think the answer to it all if I were to take it, is to simplify this a whole lot. We're not that good. That is not the expectation of you. You are not single-handedly good enough to parent with a script that has never been provided for. You're not single-handedly good enough to undo multiple generations of abuse, neglect, and trauma. You're not good enough to single-handedly undo, multiple years of the effects of colonization. That's not the question. That's not the ask of you. Okay, mama? Not one time. It is to do the next best right kind thing. Can you do that for me today? That's all I need you to do, is the next best right kind thing. And for me, there is such a relief in that permission that it allows us to become much more present quickly. And that's the call to action, I think, in this human race, is I need you back in the game as quickly as possible. Not to change the government or the world on a large scale, but at your kitchen table, in your community, as you drive to work today. All I want you to do is wave at your neighbor. That's it. That's it. That's all I need you to do. Give out one compliment today. And was that going to be enough? More than enough. You have done your humanity, your service to humanity today. That is all. We string a few of those together, we're raising our babies in healthy communities. Full stop.
I felt my nervous system settle when you said that.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think this is a good concept for a book? Because I just came off of a talk. I was just telling you this. I did a pre-vet call. She's like, I said to her, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to talk to your staff and I'm going to say, listen, okay, you're not that good. And what you need to do. And so she's like, hey, Dr. Carrington, I was just wondering if you could be a little more gentle with our. You're right, but we're just concerned that you're going to scare the people. And I was like, well, maybe you're not my people. But I didn't say that, but that's kind of what I felt like. So anyway.
People need a pattern interrupt, because what's happening right now, as you just laid out, we have more access to information than we've ever had, which also means more access to awareness of all the things that we're supposedly doing wrong.
Yes.
And so we're constantly comparing with not our neighbor, not our mother, everybody in the world, especially those with the largest Instagram following who got there by posting triggering things. There's just such a thing as rage baiting online.
Jesus Christ. But do you know what I love about this? Okay, so this is what I said this day in a talk. Sorry, I'm fixing my microphone at the same time. One generation ago as parents, okay? So one of the loneliest cohorts in this world right now are young moms, okay? And this is a big question, right? Because not only 0 to 7, but actually 0 to 2 years, the first 3 months, if I were to be given anything, is the most important part in human development of the brain, okay? So those typically tend to be a time where mamas are overwhelmed, full of hormones, feeling like pieces of shit, okay? So if I take one generation ago, 10 years ago, right? All we had access to was one big opinion. That was our mother-in-law. Now, right? Who my mother-in-law raised 3 boys. I married the oldest one. She was a farm wife, badass, don't mess with her. She's picking apples, baking pies, and she got 3 of them all attached to her at the same time, right? I got one. I'm barely hanging on. I got the depression. I would try to pump. I can't sleep. She's like, come on, put booze in the bottle. Okay? Knock them out. And I'm like, okay, Lori, I feel like that ship has sailed. Now, if we think about this for our daughters, our children, or, this current generation, you are sitting there breastfeeding. And not only did you got your mother-in-law, but you got 87 million people saying, oh, you didn't have a dolphin-assisted pool birth? Excuse me. You're not using essential oils. You're pumping with that pump. Oh my God. So
everyone's your mother-in-law all of a sudden.
It's another good book title. Everyone's your mother-in-law. See?
Let's write this one together.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. It's so right. It's actually awful, which then we're looking at this idea of connectedness, but everyone's othering each other. And so instead, you're just lonely in the presence of 87 million people.
Yeah, because it's not true connection. I mean, Esther Perel talks about this, right? The only AI that's going to matter is authentic interaction, because you can have 1,500 friends on Facebook, which I do, and nobody to feed our dog. Now, we don't have a dog, but if we did, there's nobody to feed I was just saying this to Marty this week. Marty travels with me all the time. And I'm like, okay, in 2 weeks from now, Aaron has decided, my personal husband, that he's going golfing because we're turning 50 this year. So we all agreed that he was going to take these, whatever, 6 days in golf with his dad and his brothers, and he's going to Oregon. It's all going to be fantastic. I'm working. So I am in a different part of this country speaking for 3 days straight. Our kids have a hockey tournament and two lacrosse games. My mom is busy. We've lost Aaron's mom to cancer. My dad's in a home, and Aaron's father's 2 provinces away. We're a very resourced family. I got nobody to care for our babies. Because there's somebody, like, I can't ask the neighbors. They got 6 kids. I can't ask my best friend because she's got 3 kids and like, of course we'll figure it out. But it's like this is the first generation where we haven't had this much access to grandparent-like figures.
But 4 words for you, Dr. Jody. App-enabled smart feeder.
Oh my God, why didn't I think of that? Shit. That's right, with a dolphin.
I'm sensing someone on the other end of this interview is underestimating AI, but we need to know what to do with the poop. We need our little R2D2 walking around.
Right? Exactly. We're not there yet. But I mean,
indoor lawn.
Oh God, I know. And like it's those kind of things that I think are really fascinating when we start to talk about the idea around, then are we failing our babies, right? Because it is that village. I remember, like, when my mom would come to take the kids, even when the twins were born. So our oldest is 14 and we have boy-girl twins that are 12. And, I had 3 under 3. I had been working already at that point. I felt very like I'd lost all of my independence. My work was everything to me. And now I had these 3 babies under 3, and I've never felt more incompetent. Despite the fact that I was working as a child psychologist, I had no idea what to do with my own personal children, nor did I enjoy it. So thank goodness I had access to Aaron's mom and my mom, which didn't even feel like enough. And I can't imagine how isolating it is. Kids are being raised in more single parent households now more than ever, less siblings than ever before. Less access to parents and grandparent-like figure. Like, it's the isolation and loneliness that allows us to not be like, is this normal? Like, do you feel like this sometimes too? Like, is it okay to like your work more than you like your kids? If you don't have anybody in the space that can be like, yes, honey, yes, this is supposed to be hard. Are you second guessing becoming a mom? Normal. Do you think maybe somebody else would be better to raise your children? Normal. And like, we can't, that's harder and harder to normalize, because what I get quite often, people on social media are like, you're so real. Like, yes, because the vast majority of social media aren't. They're like, we're so good. Look, we pulled together this sourdough fucking starter kit while we took our kids to school in matching outfits, and then we're going to have pictures after, family pictures in a bush.
And our jumpers are all organic.
Oh. And good for you. Like, I'm also very excited for those people. Like, this is no judgment. Like, if you can pull that shit together, God bless your soul. I'm very excited for you. Like, it does not matter to me what your jam is. That the part is that I think so much of it is fake, that we're setting a high bar for so many people that just really need to know they're doing beautifully, that you're more than enough to your babies. You're not that good, baby girl. Nope. All you need to do is next best right kind thing. And it is more than enough, I promise you.
I wonder too, if we're not just feeling so disconnected because we are comparing ourselves with everybody's highlight reels, but we're also comparing ourselves with our own highlight reels. We put stuff online, and I do believe that a lot of people identify with it so much that they believe that's who they are. And then when something comes up where it brings out a side of them that isn't on their Instagram highlight reel, their feelings of inauthenticity and creates a sort of split in their own self, and makes it even harder to identify with other people because they don't know who they are anymore. Are you the beautiful, organic, neutral colored mom on Instagram, or are you wearing your kid's Spider-Man shirt right now?
But I exactly. But I think that's true. Like, I feel like that too sometimes, right? Like there's the obligation to your community when you build one that like has become that we don't really have a script for, right? So like, do I be honest about that? Do I, whatever? And it's a real risk then, because if you've been making your life on, one particular way of operating in the world, then it becomes really difficult to be like, oh my gosh, do I take that risk and not say that thing or do this thing, Holy smokes. And there's lots of people who like, and in this space of like trying to figure out like, what are they offering the world? Often come from an N of one, right? Like this, I am here to tell you how the world works because I experienced A or B or C. Okay, great. And now we're in places of offering sweeping conversations around things that we're like, whoa. And you've got hundreds of millions of thousands of followers going like, amen. So like you get why, and making millions of dollars. So like, I think the pressure to keep that up is something we don't talk about. Like, do you find that at all?
100%. I was just having an interview with somebody that was a former reporter for the BBC, and she was talking about this moment where she wanted to bridge the divide instead of strengthening it, realizing how much of the media were just enhancing people's differing points of views. And I asked her, how did that go for you? Because the difficult part is, what I know about marketing is you need the crazy one-sided headlines to get clicks. You can't be like, so I had this really beautiful conversation with two people and we came to the middle. Click and find out about it. Nobody wants that. They want to hear like, this person aborted their dog. You know what I mean? The most, like how and what.
And mostly because we're so busy. Like it needs to be so like, I talk about this often as a speaker, and I'm sure this is true as teachers and, anybody who's trying to garner attention from other people, is that you have to be so good, because what you're competing against is a little device that now every single human has access to, where everything they love and everybody they love is instantly available. So in order to keep the connection during this podcast, we got to be really good. We got to plan it, because if we just wanted to come here and shoot the shit and, talk about a laundry list or something like that, like, okay, fine. But those podcasts aren't going to last more than 30 seconds. Because our time is and our attention is so fragmented, right? This is a couple of things that John Haidt talks about in The Anxious Generation, which I really adore. He says there's 4 things that, sort of our kids these days are up against. But the 2 things that always ring true to me are attention fragmentation. We've never seen people this attention fragmented, okay? So you're doing I've got a watch strapped on here. I've got my phone just right over here. I've got email notifications, particularly, maybe popping up. Our attention is so fragmented. Am I 100% invested in this interview? I have to shut off my notifications if I'm going to be. And many of us are not that good. Okay. So that's one. The second thing is, we've never been this sleep deprived. In order to be very present with other human beings, you are best when you are rested. And we've never been this sleep deprived. And you know this. I mean, you've seen a toddler miss a nap. They're assholery-ish, right? So are we. Mostly because we're not that good. At the end of last night, okay, so I gave a talk for a whole day up in Northern Alberta yesterday to a beautiful community, drove 5 hours, stayed in a hotel room, and flew out this morning. Now, I feel as though I have done my service to humanity yesterday. It was the most gorgeous day. I loved every bit of it. But you know what I felt like I earned the right to sink into Netflix last night. Now, I know that I should be asleep by 11 o'clock, given what I put my body through or my brain through, and what the privilege it was to be in that place. I know what would be best for me as a mother and a wife and a sister and a daughter and all the people that I'm responsible to and for and that I love would be to rest. Hey? Do you know what I was doing at 12:35 a.m. this morning? I am on season 1 of Narcos, and I am very committed to Pablo Escobar. Okay. Now I know, like I've written books about it. I understand the importance of resting my neurophysiology, particularly after I've held such big stories of trauma. I got it. Very good. Very good for me. But you know what I feel like better about is diving into somebody else's shit show. That's what I feel like. And then my body doesn't know that I'm not in a Colombian drug ring. I'm watching Pablo Escobar and I'm getting worked up because I want him to evade police. That's right. Come on, Pablo. And then my body gets so physically exhausted that my eyes start to close. So I shut the thing off, or I find it, laying beside me halfway through the next episode. And my body still thinks Pablo's in my bed. So after I kind of get a little rested, 3 hours later, I like buzz wide open. Are we okay? Is everybody okay? And I'm like, oh my God, damn it. What is wrong with me? I can't sleep. Maybe I'm going through the change. We're not designed for this much noise. So we're attention fragmented. We've never been this exhausted. And we're now trying to figure out what we do about it. Because it's just, we've developed beyond human capacity so quickly.
There is that thing between awareness and embodiment. I was just having a similar thing, minus the sex dreams about Pablo Escobar. But
I love how you made that leap. No, I would not.
He was in your bed. I know where that was going. If I would have let you talk 2 more minutes. But I was watching Handmaid's Tale came back on, right? And I am
obsessed.
I am hyper aware of my inputs. And I think it might be, I'm more aware because I grew up, my grandma would like show me horror movies at the age of like 2. I am still mildly afraid of the dark. I will have these moments of like deep terror, but I couldn't have a doll because Child's Play is the first movie I remember watching.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't just those, it was like documentaries on exorcisms. And so I'm like, so this is real too. And I could feel the split that it created in my personality. I sometimes wonder how many of the things I went through, it's attributed to that. I don't know, and I'm not here to find out. And so I am very conscious of my inputs. But Handmaid's Tale, I committed to that before I got super conscious about my inputs. I was telling my...
And I'm sorry, Elizabeth Moss, but I am not going to leave you alone in the final season.
Exactly.
I am with you, girl.
And so it was funny because my husband was hearing my commentary. I'm like watching it on my iPad one day, and I'm like, oh my God, it's just so good. Why are you doing this? He's like, listening to you is so funny. And I'm like, I know this isn't good for me. I can feel how this is going to affect me when I turn this off. But I'm taking the hit. I was like, I'm taking the hit. I'm too invested in it.
I'm going to be okay.
Last one. And I'm going to like pray before bed or something. Or play, what do they say? Play Tetris. If you watch something horrifying, play a few games of Tetris before you go to bed and it like wipes your neural pathways or something.
Wow.
I don't know all the science behind that, but I'll find out in the next episode.
That feels very TikTok-y.
So what do you do differently in your daily life, knowing what you know, to create those moments of connection? Or is it just sort of falling back and like, I'm not that good anyways, let's just...
fuck it. We're going to die anyway, you know what I mean?
I'll die alone next to each other.
You know what I mean? I'm 50. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I think really are big deals. And one is understanding the relationship between your head and your heart. And I think that when we are most stressed, we're stuck in our head. And so I often do this little exercise with everybody. And I learned this at the Children's Hospital about really just grounding in the moment. So it's as simple as this. You drop your shoulders and you drop your tongue from the roof of your mouth. The most primitive response to stress is slamming your tongue to the roof of your mouth. And every time you get a notification, an email notification, historically, we would lock our jaws when we would see bad guys coming over the hill. Okay. Or ready when we're, in a hunter-gatherer society, just be ready, when you're like that. Okay. So you'd lock your jaw in an effort to be solid. And we do that now just as a function of getting an email notification or, somebody says the word mom, 80% of the time it's not a good thing. So and we spend the vast majority of our days with our jaws locked, which indicates to our body that we are on guard. Okay. And followed by that, things like uncertainty, fear, no end in sight, raises our shoulders. Okay, similar, the same response is there. We are in a fighting stance, ready to take on, right? We've never had this much input that would suggest to us that something is not going to go well, right? The buzz on our watch, if you wear an Apple or like a smart watch or whatever, and I have one strapped to me because I'm trying to get my steps. But also what I'm strapped to is like every Team Snap Mom. It's an app where you can stay connected to all your kids as teams, right? I also have every other friend that's working out. And those bitches seem to be working out a whole lot more than me. And it lets me know every time they do something that, well, I'm sitting here on a computer, okay? So I'm getting all of these shots most of the day that keep me up here. The antithesis to that, then, if we were just to reverse engineer that, is to be much more conscious about where our shoulders are. That data is all going to come in, right? So would it make sense? Yes. Things like charge your phone outside your bedroom at least one night a week. Okay. To be very conscious about taking those things away from your, now we're not that good, right? Because we will still watch Handmaid's Tale before we go to bed, or was like, I think I told you this before. My favorite place is in a plane, and I'm in 200 planes a year, and it's so great because nobody can get me. That's why I like it, because you have to take me 35,000 feet above my friends and family so that I give myself permission, and my body knows nobody can get me. I don't sign on to the Wi-Fi unless there's a tragedy happening somewhere or I need to get something done for a deadline. It is a strict rule for me that I do not get the Wi-Fi on a plane. Then I know that even if my dad is struggling or my babies are struggling, there's nothing I can do 35,000 feet up in the air anyways. I might as well not know about it. I sleep like a baby on a plane. We're not good enough to disconnect, right? So the reverse engineer for me is, how many times, put the word shoulders on a sticky note, put it on your computer, put it on your bathroom mirror. This is a season where we will have to learn not how to hustle harder, but how to rest. Not how to sleep when we're dead and get up at 5, do yoga, pick a word of the day, fucking eat kale, and do 47 push-ups before the kids get up. Like, holy Christ. We will be better when, as we talked about at the top of the show, right? You were such a curious kid because you had space for curiosity. We're going to have to make that on purpose.
I could feel myself having the experiences of our society, or altered by the experiences of our society, while listening to you, because the first thing I thought when you're like, oh, drop your tongue from the roof of your mouth, I'm like, but according to Mewing principles and jaw health, I'm supposed to keep my tongue glued to the top of my mouth. Otherwise, my jaw's going to be even more recessed than it already is, and I won't be able to chew steak ever again.
And the shoulders are right up here. Yes.
There's no reason to keep my shoulders up there. Down and back, although then I just saw Doc Jen Fit posted, down and back is wrong. You got to do down and forward. And I'm like, God. I
don't know where I'm supposed to put my body anymore. Yeah.
And mind you, I also did a marketing training that talked about how, here's what you're supposed to do. Find your unique mechanism and then attack the other people. And I was like, no wonder we're all so confused. The only way to get ahead is making everybody else wrong.
Yeah, right. Right. And I think, what is older than anything, if we go back to Eastern philosophical practices, it's really about the idea of regulating within. You have to go in before you can ever turn out. And I think that's irrefutable science. And however you do that, right? If it's shoulders back or shoulders forward or whatever that looks like, everybody's going to have their own theory. But what all I need you to know is your prefrontal cortex has to feel safe. And wherever that is in your body, knowing that requires some connection between your head and your heart. And I think that for me, that knowledge, I can't unsee that. I understand how important that is to do every once in a while. The quickest ways I get back there are two things. Take a drink of water, take a drink of anything, okay? Because you can't chew and swallow with a flipped prefrontal cortex. You can't, neurobiologically impossible. And I try to belly laugh as much as I can, because the most vulnerable emotion on the planet is joy. Now, as a human, I would argue that I am one of the funniest people I know. I am fucking hilarious. And I love waking up with me every day, because the shit I come up with is ridiculous. And I can't imagine not having fun in your own body, because you're going to wake up with you for the rest of your days. So if there is a sense of overwhelming self-criticalness, if there is, and many of us come honestly by this, from trauma. If there is a sense of unsafety in your own body, it becomes very hard to connect your head and your heart. And so I think, again, back to this point of like what brings us back to that state of emotional regulation are things like joy, are things like giving it away, are things like on purpose, dropping your shoulders, dropping your tongue, being very focused, unregulated. And the more you fire those neural pathways, the more they wire.
That brings me to an important point because you talk about this safety within your own body. And I think we have this tendency, even when we're bringing more self-awareness into this, it's like, well, I learned this, or I'm comparing myself to Instagram, or my mother used to say this. But at some point, if that other person isn't in front of you attacking you or challenging you anymore, and you are the one letting that repeat in your head unchecked, it's kind of on you in a way. Like, yes, trauma is very difficult for people, and I'm not at all saying it's your fault, but it is your responsibility to then notice what your circumstances that you could not change have created within you and to bring it back into balance. And maybe that is the exact purpose of this life. You might have had a horrible mother, you might have had an amazing mother, but right now, it's your responsibility to reparent yourself to bring you back to that baseline so you can experience joy instead of just repeating and projecting your previous situation over and over and over again.
I agree with a caveat because self-reflection is a privilege. So as we talked about at the top of the show, again, it's this idea that being able to be self-reflective requires you to be in a safe enough place to do that. So if you are stuck in an abusive, cyclic, multiple generation stages of relationship, you don't have any opportunity to self-reflect, perhaps, right? It might not be safe enough to do that. You've got to just stay on guard and be ready for it. And I say this quite often in kids in therapy. You know, when we start to treat without assessment, I always get worried, right? Well, this kid's anxious, so we're going to give him deep breathing techniques. No, you're not. He's watching mom beat the shit out of dad every night. That kid needs to be on guard. What we need to do is understand the system in which it's occurring, and then we treat that. Okay. So when I think about, you know, not your fault, but your responsibility, I would agree vehemently. What becomes really interesting is, though, judging when and who should be taking responsibility. Because I think that that's the ideal place for everybody to get in a place where they're well enough to start to take responsibility, which means there needs to be some form of reflection. If we are stuck in this safety space, if we're stuck in that anger, this is not fair space, there needs to be someone or somebody, usually someone safe enough that can bring you back into this understanding where we can reflect on the fact that mom did the best she could with what she had. And we can all agree it wasn't enough. And if we can stay stuck there that, yes, but why did I deserve this? Why did I get a mom like this? Yes, let's ask all those questions. And then what? But oftentimes we just stay stuck there. So we have to stay very disconnected or dysregulated in that place in order to either maintain some sort of proximity to mom, or to keep some safe distance from mom, whatever that looks like, right? Because in order to heal, there needs to be some regulation here before we can begin that process of forgiveness, separation, and then taking on responsibility for the next generation. So I think I agree with you 100%. It's like, when we do that and how we do that is the difference, I think, between getting caught in this conversation around blaming the victim. That, you know, oftentimes we find ourselves in this space, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, now it's my responsibility to fix what my mom fucked up? No, baby girl. No. You're not the problem. You're the solution. But we have to understand where mom came from in order to give you that release to be able to do your own work.
I believe I shared on your podcast how I had a big aha moment. It was one of this almost out of body experience of being in a jail cell and realizing all I could think about was my eating disorder. And as you were speaking, I wonder if that is why I was able to see that, was because finally I had enough stillness and boredom that I was just there with myself noticing. Whereas before I was numbing, distracted, struggling, suffering.
How much work is an eating disorder? I mean, tell your audience. It is a full-time fucking job.
All you think about.
Yes. And which is a beautiful way that your body protects you from all the pain that's underneath that. And so we consider eating disorders, personality disorders, anything that sort of gets in the way of anxiety as the demon, the bad part of it. But it's actually a beautiful part of you trying to protect her. And when we can understand why she's there to protect you, then she doesn't need to do that anymore. We give her permission to not have to do that anymore. And when you sat in that jail cell, I mean, that experience of being, accused of a crime you didn't commit trumped the eating disorder. And you were there in that quiet space about how did I get here? This is not how it started. I am smarter, better, cute. That little girl who was sitting in that room, in that classroom, trying to think about all the things she was going to be and do. Where did she go? Where is she? And you started to reconnect to those parts of you. And that's where the shift started to happen, right? As you explained it to me.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly how it happened.
You reconnected your head and your heart. And often it's rare that we can do this by ourselves. Right? And your self-reflection that was there, that got numbed, I would argue, over the years, given sort of the multiple traumas that kind of came in, there were pieces of you that were coming back together even before it culminated in that jail.
It's one of those moments where you get a love rush for all the versions of yourself that got you here.
Yes.
I had a moment like that in my life. Well, it was actually when I thought I was good. Apparently I wasn't that good. I thought I was doing so much better. I was making good decisions. I was proud of my life. And I realized how often I was ashamed of that girl from about 19 to 26. And even though I was proud of my life now, I just kept being like, yeah, but she was a mess, And another step of my healing happened when I really I remember these little moments of binging and purging for 10 hours straight, not going out, not wanting to see people, realizing how unhealthy that was, that I can't even go out and have fun when the whole thing, I think I'm doing this to like create a perfect body so people like me, but I can't go out because I'm stuck here. And this just cycle that I could see was unhealthy, but I couldn't stop myself. And then I just remembered the moment of picking up Don Miguel Ruiz, going on Amazon looking for a book, listening to a podcast, going on a walk, trying to save myself from the next purge. And it didn't always work, but I had to reconnect to several versions of myself and be like, she also wasn't a mess up. She didn't just mess up and lose 7 years of her life. She got me here. She took those first steps. She grabbed that first book. She did the things, and she wasn't healed yet, but in many ways, neither am I.
None of it. And this is the point, right? She was taking those little risks to reconnect the head and the heart. It doesn't happen like this.
Yeah.
It happens in very slow, almost like sewing pieces, right? Where you're just like, let's try this book. Oh, are we okay? Are we okay? I think you're a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. Let's go purge a little bit more. It's okay. Now let's just try one more day without it. And as you start to sew those pieces back together, you suddenly wake up in a place where you'd longed to be, because it doesn't happen overnight. And we will look back on this conversation 10 years from now when your babies are teenagers and things are happening and their mama is so much different in a different place. And you'll be like, do you remember that girl? Huh? And I think about, that's what's remarkable. We sort of feel like we've arrived sometimes because we're parents or we've been married or we're like, whatever, running successful businesses. But like, I really can't wait to look back on me at 49 and wonder, all of the shit that I'm trying to figure out in this moment and what she's going to be like. I can't wait. That just makes me so excited about what it's going to look like at 60 and 70 and however long I get to be here.
Well, if you were to leave listeners with one thing to either think about or practice this week to kind of bring this into their real world, what would you leave them with?
I would say two things. What we talked about today are probably the most important things because you're just the most phenomenal interviewer. And I would say, next best right kind thing. That's all you got on your plate this week. Okay. Whatever you do, whoever you serve, wherever you're living, whatever's, you got in your world right now, next best right kind thing. And then drop your shoulders. Reconnect that head and heart.
For listeners who just want to hear more of you and how fucking funny you are, where can they find you?
Oh, I would love your community to be a part of ours. I'm at drjodycarrington.com and we're often on the socials. So come hang out with us.
And definitely listen to our interview that we had on Dr. Jody's podcast. Episode links are at mindlove.com/402. And your challenge for this week is simple but powerful. Just do the next best right kind thing. That's it. Not the perfect thing, not the heroic thing, just the next kind thing. Find your partner, your kid, your neighbor, yourself, and notice how that one small act opens the door to connection. For me, one of the biggest sources of connection has been this podcast, which is kind of ironic, right? It's a broadcast. It's one-sided by design. But the moment I stopped performing and started sharing my real thoughts and stories and struggles, I couldn't help but attract real connection. Some of you I talk to in the DMs multiple times a week. Some of you have become actual friends. And I think that happens when you share what you're passionate about. It's hard to make friends out of thin air, but when you know what drives you, what you care about, you naturally find people on a similar wavelength. And that's the beauty of story. It's not just how we process our lives, it's how we create resonance. And that resonance is the root of all connection. So if you want help uncovering the story you're living in and shaping it into something that actually aligns with who you're becoming, and then taking that out into the world to fuel your mission, reach out to me on Instagram at mindlovemelissa. I would love to hear your story. You can find my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And if you want a little more love in your mornings, sign up for the Morning Mind Love at mindlove.com or just text the word morning to 33777. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.